Hi, this is Moon Manuscript. I'm R.K. Thorne, author of over 10 romantasy and space opera novels. And today we're going to talk about how to get grounded in your character. Life can get really busy, and so we rarely get to sit down and write a novel from beginning to end. In fact, that's basically impossible. So, as time passes while we're working on a novel, we sometimes need ways to remind ourselves, who is this character? There's a couple of ways we can do that. One is we can have a character sheet, a very basic name, eye color, hair color, but also what do they struggle with? Are they in tune with their community? What is their journey that they're on? What kind of change are they having? Um, what are their hobbies, in case you forgot from the last time you wrote it in that early scene? I really like to keep them beside my writing computer and write it down as I'm coming up with it so that I'm sort of documenting my work as I go. But you can also do it ahead of time as a way of getting into the story and planning out the story and make a really cool character and then start writing with it. Sometimes when I do that, my characters rebel and they change from what I wrote on the character sheet. So that's usually why I do it as I go. Another way you can do it is, even if you have that, it can be hard to stick to that sometimes. So sometimes I really like to think of a celebrity or a character that has a really unique, defined personality and think of, would that character, how does that character act? And then as I'm writing, I can really test that. Like, hey, my character, are they acting like this sort of spirit person that is, the inspiration for this character? And so I wouldn't necessarily try to model them after that, but it would give me a test to try to make sure that I am really making the character consistent across the work. So, for example, let's say that you picked Dwayne The Rock Johnson. I haven't actually modeled any characters after him, so let's pick him. But let's say you make a character after The Rock, right? It might help you that if you're in a scene and the character has been invited to a tea party, to really make sure that The Rock type character acts like he would act. And maybe he doesn't switch into a Benedict Cumberbatch type character for 5 minutes, because then you might have to then go and edit that out. Or, that can be a way to kind of ground yourself in what type of person am I writing? Another thing that I like to use is the tarot. So if you've tried to play with the tarot at all, whether you believe in it as a divination practice or whether it's just for fun, tarot has a lot of different archetypal cards. The shirt I'm wearing is actually the Empress. So the Empress is a good example, is a really caring, nurturing, but powerful being, that a mother figure that really cares for everyone around her. The Queen of Pentacles is kind of in that realm too. And you might use that as your inspiration, that this is a character that I want to embody that energy. And if they get into a problem, maybe the way they solve that problem is by nurturing others who help her solve that problem. Or if the character is instead the Emperor is very much about directive and clarity and knowing what should happen and telling everyone, this is the time to do this thing. Or similar archetype might be the King of Swords, who's going to use logic to solve problems quickly and directly, and not let anything fluffy get in the way. So, that is a very different character than, say, the Knight of Wands. The Knight of Wands is a fiery, impulsive character. Actually, the Knight of Wands is the inspiration for the prince in The Mage Slave, who is kind of overly impulsive, for better or worse. But at least it leads to some fun in our novel. So you can think of that. You could also think of other archetypes. There's all kinds of archetype stories out there in the world that could drive that character in a certain energy or direction. And another way that you can use, which is similar to the archetypes in the tarot, is you can use personality tests. So take a personality test as your character, and then you can reread or look at things that remind you of that character type to help you stay grounded in that character type. Now, you may tend to write characters like you. So if you have a certain Enneagram type or Myers-Briggs, and I can go into more detail on those in another video, but they're just different ways of categorizing personalities that are sort of pseudoscientific, but can be fun. you may tend to write ones that are like you. And if you want to write a different type of character, having that to ground you in what a person like that thinks like could be a good way to get started, or to test your work when you're editing, or to help you solve a difficult plot problem that they might, how would an INFJ act in this situation? That's going to be a lot different than how an ENFJ would act in this situation. And they also can give you some ways to sort of flesh out your characters and make sure you've thought of the different aspects of them. So those are 4 ways to get grounded in your characters. Especially when life is busy from day to day, it can be really hard to make sure that we write the same character across 100,000 words. And having some tips and tools that work for you can be a really good way to make sure that the character stays consistent. If you have a trick, I'd love to hear it, because it's something that I can struggle with for times, and I would love to edit less. So let me know in the comments. And if this has been helpful, give me a like or a subscribe. Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you later. This has been Moon Manuscript, and I'm RK Thorne, author of romantasy and space opera. Thanks.